April 8th, 1943. 1700 hours. Just off the coast of Oran, Algeria, waves slapping against the steel ribs of a U.S. Navy attack transport, the USS Ormsby, anchored in the choppy Mediterranean. The air is thick with diesel fumes, brine, and the low, constant hum of idling engines. Below deck, in the dim red glow of battle lamps, a group of Marines huddle near the bow ramp of a strange-looking craft lashed to the ship's davits. It's boxy, flat-bottomed, with a gaping front door that looks like it belongs on a barn, not a war machine. Its plywood hull is scarred from salt water and sand, and its single engine coughs like a sick dog. "Looks like a bathtub with delusions of grandeur," says Private First Class Jack Mallory, 22, from Kansas, wiping grease from his hands after helping prep the craft's ramp mechanism. He's crouched beside Sergeant Ernie Coletti, a grizzled veteran of Guadalcanal, who spits into the bilge water sloshing at their boots. "Call it what you want," Coletti mutters, "but this ugly bastard carried us onto Tulagi. Saved my ass when the Jap artillery started walking in." He taps the hull with his helmet. "This thing, it's called a Higgins Boat. And if you're smart, you'll stop laughing and start praying it holds together when we hit the beach." Around them, sailors and soldiers exchange skeptical glances. The LCVP, landing craft, vehicle, personnel, wasn't designed in a naval architecture lab in Newport. It was born in a New Orleans boatyard, the brainchild of a stubborn, cigar-chomping entrepreneur named Andrew Jackson Higgins. His company, Higgins Industries, had spent the 1930s building shallow draft boats for oil men and trappers navigating the bayous. When the U.S. Army came calling in 1940, desperate for a way to land troops on unimproved shores, they brought a requirement: a craft that could carry 36 men or a 1.5-ton vehicle, run in just 39 inches of water, and retract quickly after unloading. Higgins took their specs, tossed them in the trash, and built his own version, based on his Eureka boat design. It had a spoon-shaped bow that cradled the craft over sandbars, a drop-down ramp operated by a simple winch, and enough clearance to plow through mangroves and coral. The Navy hated it at first. Too crude, too ugly, too American. Officers called it the landing craft that looks like a coffin with a kickstand. Admirals in London snorted at its plywood and steel hybrid hull, preferring their elegant, deep-keel British landing craft. But Higgins didn't care. He built them fast, over 20,000 by war's end, in factories staffed by women, African Americans, and workers from every corner of the Crescent City. His production lines ran 24 hours a day, turning out LCVPs at a rate that defied belief. And slowly, grudgingly, the military began to see what the sailors mocked. This ungainly craft could do something no other boat could. It could land. By late 1942, the LCVP had already proven itself in Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa. Troops from the 34th Infantry Division splashed ashore near Casablanca in Higgins boats, scrambling out under light resistance. It wasn't D-Day, but it was proof of concept. The boat could deliver men directly onto the beach, then back away before getting swamped. No docks, no cranes, no waiting. Now, in April 1943, the Oran fleet is staging for the next phase, Sicily. And every landing craft on board, from the larger LCIs to the tiny LCVPs, bears the unmistakable Higgins stamp. Yet the jokes persist. "Bet you a pack of luckies it flips when it hits the surf," says a Navy coxswain, leaning against the davit controls. "Flip? It'll sink from laughter," another sailor quips. But Lieutenant Commander Frank Mallison, the embarked naval officer in charge of boat operations, isn't laughing. He stands at the rail, binoculars trained on the horizon, where a dozen other transports ride the swells. He remembers Tarawa, where British-style landing craft grounded 500 yards offshore, forcing Marines to wade through chest-deep water under murderous fire. Hundreds died before they even reached the beach. The Higgins boat wasn't there. It should have been. He turns and eyes the LCVP being winched up from the davits after a drill. Water streams from its ramp. A mechanic kicks the engine, and it sputters to life. Rough, loud, but running. Mallison steps forward, places a hand on the hull and says quietly, "You're ugly. I'll give you that. But if you get my boys ashore, I'll kiss you goodbye." The crew falls silent. Even the jokers sense the shift, the unspoken understanding that in a few weeks or months, this ridiculous little boat might be the only thing standing between them and a bullet-riddled beach. Far below, in the dim hold, a young Navy coxswain named Tommy Briggs checks the throttle linkage on his assigned LCVP, Craft 7B. He's 19, from Boston, and this is his first combat drop. He runs a hand along the worn wooden gunnel, then pauses. Taped inside the coaming, barely visible, is a faded photo of a woman and a baby. Someone's wife. Someone's child. Briggs doesn't know whose. But he knows now. This boat carries more than rifles and rations. It carries lives. He whispers, "Don't let us down." The engine coughs again. The ramp creaks. Somewhere, a foghorn sounds. The invasion of Europe is coming. And the Higgins boat, mocked and misunderstood, is ready. November 20th, 1943. 06:34 hours. Batio Island, Tarawa Atoll, Gilbert Islands. The Pacific dawn breaks not with light, but with fire. The horizon is a jagged silhouette of smoke and flame as the USS Maryland and her sister battleships unleash a thunderous barrage, 16-inch shells screaming overhead, detonating in geysers of coral and concrete along the Japanese-held shore. The sea churns with landing craft, bobbing like corks in a tempest. Among them, dozens of LCVPs, Higgins boats, lurch forward in ragged lines, their engines straining against the current. Inside one of them, Craft 12F, Private First Class Ray Sullivan crouches low, his M1 Garand clutched to his chest, his helmet pulled down tight. Around him, 30 other Marines from the 2nd Marine Division are packed so tightly they can't move. The air reeks of sweat, salt, and the sharp tang of vomit. The coxswain, Seaman 2nd Class Danny Ruiz, grips the wheel with white-knuckled hands, eyes locked on the beach 800 yards ahead. "Hold steady," Ruiz shouts over the engine's roar. "We're hitting the line." But the line is chaos. The naval bombardment intended to soften Japanese defenses failed. Reinforced concrete pillboxes, coastal guns buried in coral, remain intact, and the tide, miscalculated by planners, is too low. The Higgins boats, designed to run in just 39 inches, should be able to reach the shore, but the reef, unmapped, jagged, rises beneath them like a hidden jaw. "Reef ahead," Ruiz barks. "Brace." The LCVP slams into the coral with a shudder that throws men to their knees. The engine whines, wheels spinning in empty water. They're stuck, 100 yards from the beach. "Ramp's jammed," a Marine yells. Ruiz slams the throttle, then cuts it. "No good, she's grounded." On the beach, machine guns open up, Type 92s and Nimbus, spitting 30 caliber death in sweeping arcs. Men who try to jump out are cut down instantly, vanishing into the red-tinged surf. A nearby LCVP takes a direct hit from a 37mm anti-tank gun. Its ramp explodes outward, bodies tumbling into the sea. But then, from the next wave, another Higgins boat, Craft 15A, nudges forward, its coxswain weaving through the wreckage. He noses the craft onto the reef at an angle, then hits the ramp release. It drops with a clang. "Go! Go! Go!" he screams. Marines pour out, sinking to their waists, then their chests, wading forward under fire. One man trips, disappears beneath the foam. Another drags a bar team through the surf, screaming orders lost in the gunfire. And still, more Higgins boats come. They aren't perfect. Many are destroyed. Some capsize. Others burn. But crucially, unlike the British landing craft used at Dieppe in 1942, these boats have a functional ramp. They can unload. They can deliver. And even when they can't reach the beach, they get closer than anything else. By midday, the situation is dire. Communications are down. Commanders can't see the battlefield. But on the water, the Higgins boats keep coming, shuttling reinforcements, evacuating wounded, braving sniper fire and mortar bursts. A Navy corpsman in Craft 8D pulls alongside a sinking LCM, dragging 8 bleeding Marines aboard before turning back under fire. Back on the reef, Ruiz manages to reverse the engine, rocking the craft free. He turns it sideways, drops the ramp, and yells, "Out! Now!" Sullivan leaps into the water, rifle held high. Bullets snap past his head. A man to his left takes a round in the throat, drops without a sound. Sullivan keeps moving, gasping, choking on salt water, until he stumbles onto the black sand of Betio. He collapses behind a shattered coconut log. Around him, the beach is a charnel house, bodies tangled in barbed wire, landing craft burning like pyres. But then he sees it. Another Higgins boat, battered, its bow caved in, backing away from the shore, its ramp raised. It's retreating, empty. "They made it back," Sullivan whispers. That night, only 500 yards offshore, a group of LCVPs rides at anchor under a blood-orange sky. Mechanics work by flashlight, patching hulls with wooden plugs and marine epoxy. Coxswains sleep in their seats, rifles across their laps. Commanders huddle on a transport deck, studying maps. The cost is staggering, over 1,000 Marines dead in 76 hours. But the island is taken, and the lesson is seared into military doctrine. Without a craft that can land directly on the beach, amphibious warfare is suicide. In Washington, Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, initially skeptical of the Higgins design, writes in his after-action report, "The LCVP was the single most important piece of equipment in the entire operation. Without it, we would not have taken Tarawa." Back in New Orleans, Andrew Higgins reads the report and smokes a cigar in silence. He doesn't celebrate. He just picks up the phone and tells his foreman, "Double the shift, Normandy's next." The Higgins boat, once mocked as a half-coffin, half-outhouse, has earned its place. Not through elegance, not through prestige, but through blood, sand, and the will to deliver men where no boat had gone before. June 6, 1944. Aero 6, 12 hours. 5 miles off Omaha Beach, English Channel. The sea is a steel-gray expanse heaving under a leaden sky, swells rolling like slow-motion avalanches beneath the hulls of thousands of ships. The air vibrates with the drone of B-17s passing overhead and the distant thunder of naval guns pounding the French coast. Inside LCVP 4 Charlie, bobbing violently in the chop, Staff Sergeant Walter Henshaw of the 1st Infantry Division grips the side rail, his knuckles white, his stomach churning with salt water and fear. Around him, 30 men from Company A, 16th Infantry Regiment, sit packed shoulder to shoulder, rifles clutched, helmets low, faces pale under streaks of camouflage grease. The boat reeks of diesel, vomit, and wet wool. The coxswain, Navy coxswain James Red Kelly, leans into the wheel, squinting through rain-spattered goggles at the smoke-wreathed shoreline ahead. "Hold tight," Kelly shouts over the engine's growl. "We're going in hot." The Higgins boat bucks through the swell, its flat bottom slamming down with each wave, sending jolts up the spines of the men inside. Some pray, others stare blankly at their boots. One young private, barely 18, whispers his sister's name like a mantra. They've been at sea since 0200, launched from the USS Samuel Chase, one of hundreds of transports forming a vast armada stretching across the horizon. Above them, paratroopers drift behind enemy lines. Below, minesweepers have cleared narrow channels through German obstacles.
But no one knows if they're still clear. And then, suddenly, the beach comes into view. Omaha is a nightmare of smoke, fire, and concrete. The Germans have fortified it with tetrahedrons, Belgian gates, an anti-tank mine saw designed to stop landing craft cold. But the Higgins boats aren't tanks. They're light, shallow draft, agile. Here we go. Kelly yells as the first line of obstacles appears a forest of steel, girders rising from the surf. He weaves between them, throttle steady, eyes locked on a gap. The LCVP lurches forward, its bow slicing through the last breaker. Then thud! The hull grinds onto shingle. Ramp coming down, go, go, go. With a metallic clang, the front ramp drops, sinking into the churned sand. Bullets snap overhead, instantly MG-42S. From the bluffs raking the water in deadly rhythm, Men leap out, some tripping, others sprinting forward. A Marine from the 29th Division takes 3 steps before collapsing. A hole torn through his chest. Another falls mid-stride, arms flung wide. But more keep coming, pouring from Higgins's boats all along the shore. On the seawall, a group of engineers from the 149th Combat Engineers struggle to blow a path through the barbed wire. Their own landing craft was destroyed by artillery. They waded in from a crippled LCVP that managed to drop them within 50 yards of the objective. Meanwhile, back in the surf, Kelly fights to reverse his boat. The engine sputters salt water in the carburetor. A shell explodes 10 feet to starboard, dousing the craft in spray and debris. "Come on, you bastard." Kelly slaps the ignition. The engine coughs, then roars. He throws it into reverse, pulling free just as another round hits the spot where they'd land it. He turns the LCVP around, not toward safety, but toward the transport fleet. His mission isn't done. He'll make 7 trips that day, delivering reinforcements, evacuating wounded, dodging snipers and mortars. By noon, Omaha Beach is a slaughterhouse. Of the 35 LCVPs in the first wave, only 12 are still operational. But those 12 and dozens more behind them have delivered over 34,000 men by nightfall. Tanks, jeeps, ammunition, medics all brought ashore on the backs of Higgins' ungainly creation. At 1800 hours, General Omar Bradley watches from the bridge of the USS Augusta binoculars trained on the smoking coastline. When asked how the landing succeeded despite the chaos, he doesn't mention generals or bombers. He says thank God for Higgins. Back in New Orleans, the factories never sleep. Even now, as news of D-Day spreads, the assembly lines keep moving. Women weld hulls,
painted with 7 white stars, 1 for each successful landing. Inside, 32 Marines from the 5th Marine Division crouch in silence, their faces smeared with soot and sweat, their gear weighed down with extra ammo, water, and Bangalore torpedoes for blowing gaps in wire. Malone checks his compass, then peers ahead through binoculars. The beach, Yellow Beach 2, is a narrow strip of volcanic sand littered with black boulders and rising in places to sheer cliffs. No natural cover, and yet the Higgins boat noses forward without hesitation. 30 seconds. Malone shouts over the engine's growl. Ramp drops. On impact, be ready to move. The men rise, gripping their rifles, hearts pounding in unison with the boat's rhythm. One young private crosses himself. Another whispers, "Please, let us make it 5 yards." Then asterisk, crunch, asterisk. The LCVP slams onto the black sand, its bow burying slightly in the loose grit. Before the dust settles, Malone slaps the ramp release. Down, it crashes. And instantly, the world erupts. Machine gun fire rakes the surf from pillboxes hidden in the rocks. Mortar scream down from the heights of Mount Suribachi. Men fall before they even step off. A nearby LCVP takes a direct hit. Its fuel tank explodes, engulfing 3 boats in flame. But Malone doesn't hesitate. Go! He roars. Marines leap into the chaos, sprinting for the nearest cover, half buried. Amphibian tractor overturned like a dead beetle. More Higgins boats follow, wave after wave, disgorging men, weapons, and supplies directly on to the killing zone. What makes Iwo Jima different from Tarawa, even Normandy, is not just the ferocity of resistance, but the terrain. There are no piers, no harbors, no roads. The only way to sustain the assault is constant. Resupplied LCVPs must keep coming again and again, under relentless fire. By midday, the beach is a graveyard of shattered landing craft. Some are flipped, others burn, but still, the Higgins boats return loaded with fresh troops, medical supplies, and replacement weapons. Wounded men are carried back aboard, wrapped in blood-soaked pun. Evacuated 2 hospital ships bobbing offshore. One coxswain, Seaman First Class Thomas Wu, makes 9 trips in 18 hours. On his final run, his boat is struck by shrapnel, losing power. He rows the last 200 yards with an oar, delivering 8 wounded Marines before collapsing from exhaustion. At headquarters, General Holland Smith watches the landings from the command ship Achilles. When asked how the operation is progressing despite the carnage, he doesn't mention air support or artillery. He says simply, "We're still moving men ashore." That means the Higgins is working. And it is. By the time Mount Suribachi falls, on February 23rd, over 70,000 U.S. personnel have been landed, nearly all of them via LCVP of the 600 Higgins boats deployed. More than half are damaged or destroyed. Yet not one failure is traced to the design. Every loss is due to enemy action, not mechanical flaw. In the weeks that follow, the same story repeats at Okinawa Prial. First, 1945. Rain-lashed beaches, hidden caves, kamikaze attacks. Still, the LCVPs come, ferrying Army and Marine units through typhoon seas and suicide dives, delivering the final hammer blows to Japan's outer defenses. Then, on September 2nd, 1945, the war ends. In Tokyo Bay, aboard the USS Missouri *, General Douglas MacArthur signs the instrument of surrender. Below decks, tucked among crates of documents and ceremonial flags, sits a single, battered LCVP Craft 001, the first production model, flown in for symbolic display. It bears no medals, no plaque, just dense weld marks, and a faded Higgins Industries New Orleans stencil on the hull. Yet President Truman, reviewing the invasion campaigns later that year, declares, "Andrew Higgins earned the title, the man who won the war for us. If Higgins had not designed and built those landing craft, we never could have put the Allies ashore." Back in Louisiana, Higgins stands alone in his factory yard, watching workers dismantle the assembly lines. The war is over. The orders have stopped. The world has moved on. But as he runs a hand along the gunnel of a freshly finished LCVP Never to See Combat, he smiles. Because history doesn't remember elegance. It remembers what worked. And the ugly duckling of the bayous had carried freedom across every ocean.